Welcome to Insights into Success, where with your host Paul Dodds, we hope to educate, inspire and motivate you to achieve your own personal success. We talk to guests from all around the world from a variety of walks of life to hear the realities of their own journey to success. What challenges have they faced? How have they coped with failure? And what have been the keys or will be the keys to their own success? In our Read to Succeed interviews, we talk books that have inspired our guests, and for some, they share their secrets to marketing success. Join us as we give you insights into success.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for agreeing to join us on Insights into Success. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. What I would like to do just to kick this interview off is for you to give our listeners a bit of a background on what you do, who you are and what you do.
So who I am and what I do, the first thing is at this point in my life, so yesterday was my birthday, I'm 33 years old, and the reason I start there is that I didn't have this much clarity at the beginning of my life. It's been quite a journey, but right now I'm a coach and consultant first, a speaker and a trainer second, and a podcaster third. And as a matter of fact, at this stage in my life, those are the only three things I really do. Even within our business, I'm the coach and consultant within our business who makes sure that all the people are rowing in the same direction and everyone's in the right position to succeed. But early in my life, I didn't know that. I've been coaching my entire life, but I didn't know that. And I look back, and even when people didn't want to talk about success, I was always talking about it. And I was always aiming high. So to give you a little bit backstory about me, so I'll try to give you the short version. Obviously, it's hard to condense 33 years into, 3 minutes, but I'll give you the shortest version I can.
Right.
So I came into this world. I'm 2 years old. I have an older sister and a mother, and my father actually passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old. Okay, wow. So I'm 2 at the time, almost 3. Yeah, he was very young.
Yeah.
And right out of the gate, I didn't know this at the time, but it's become very clear. Looking back in hindsight, I can see clearly now that normal was never going to be for me. So I had a stepdad from age 3 basically to age 14. And I remember when I was 7 years old, my stepdad left when I was 14. But when I was 7 years old, my mom gave me this lesson that still to this day, and again, this is insights into success. This is still the best lesson I've ever gotten. So I'm just going to give it to you guys out of the gate.
Correct.
She said, Alan, life is about choices. And if you aim high, you'll have choices. She said, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. I'm going to love you either way.
Yeah.
But if you're a CEO and you wake up one day and decide you want to be a farmer, you can do that. But it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. I told the story once and someone got offended. They're like, my aunt is a farmer. They work so hard. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I was 7 years old and my mom was just trying to explain it to me in an authentic way that I would understand. And I really got that. I always aimed really, really high. Even when I was a kid, lemonade stand, trying to use my chemistry set to create bug repellent. Like I've always been sort of from a young age. Steve Jobs was my hero. Rest in peace, Steve Jobs. But okay, so fast forward, my original aim high was be a Fortune 50 CEO in America, like my hero, Steve Jobs.
Right.
And in 2011, there's a book called Steve Jobs that came out by Walter Isaacson, and I saw his 2005 Stanford address, and I remember literally getting up out of my economics class and like walking out the door, and I went and started a little company called Campus Libre with some of my roommates at the time. But the idea here, to circle back a little bit, my mom did something very fascinating with me. She said, Alan, I'm going to take a chance on you. And she said, if you promise me that you'll get the President's Award in high school, in other words, straight A's all through high school, I have it behind me, then I'm going to let you take 8th grade off. So 8th grade was middle school for us, and it was right before high school. And I still have to legally go to school. So I still have to show up. But she said, you don't have to try. Just have fun. Just go have fun.
Right.
Which was a huge risk, honestly, in hindsight.
But Alan, can I just ask you there, just for us over here, what age would that be roughly?
Yeah. So in freshman in high school was 14. So I was probably about 13 years old.
13. Right. Okay.
Yeah. 13. So she said, I'm going to take a chance on you. Yep. So if you look at my academic career, I've got all A's, a couple B's up to the 8th grade. Then it's like C's and D's and like maybe a couple B's. and then high school
Right.
straight A's the entire time, except for 1 B+ in honors English, Miss Desilets. I never took honors English again after that. I was more of a math guy myself. But
Right.
I got the President's Award. And my dream was to go to a school called Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's sort of like a mini MIT, for those of you who don't know it. It's one of the top tech schools literally on the planet. And that was just, that opened up a whole new world for me in terms of opportunity. And so I went into corporate. I did a lot of job hopping. I worked for a company called iRobot. I worked for a software company called Oz Development. I went to LA for a time. I lived there for a few months.
And Alan, can I just interject there for a second? Could you just give us a bit of an understanding of what sort of roles were you doing, and what degree did you graduate with?
Yeah, so at WPI, I got my electrical and computer engineering degree.
Right.
And then I actually stayed because at the time, again, my hero was Steve Jobs. I found out that most Fortune 500 CEOs have an engineering undergrad with a master's in business administration graduate degree. I think it was something like 60% when I did my research. So I went back for my MBA. So I also got my master's in business as well. And so with the engineering undergrad, computer engineer, plus the MBA, I was like, okay, I'm going to go out into the corporate world and I'm going to climb my way to the top type of thing.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of job hopping, a lot of soul searching. What roles was I in? So I did global product management for a company called Sensata Technologies for a time. It used to be Texas Instruments. I worked for Tyco Safety Products. I worked on a product management team also for iRobot, marketing team there, product management. Then eventually I ended up at a company called Cognex. Cognex sells industrial automation equipment, and I started an inside sales team there, and then eventually got promoted to outside sales. And I managed all of Western New England. So, Vermont, Connecticut, Western Massachusetts, and I was on the road a lot. Now, this is where my story gets sort of interesting and takes a turn. I'm 26 years old. I'm still working at Cognex. I'm, making multi-six figures at this point. I'm young. I don't need a lot of money. My expenses are super low. I drive a $2,400 car at the time, or $4,500 car. My next one was actually $2,400. I paid off all my school loans in 1 year. I remember I paid off $84,000 worth of debt in 1 year, so I'm debt-free. Wow. And I'm up in New Hampshire with my little cousin. And this is where everything took a turn for me. We're just playing Call of Duty. We're not partying or anything. And we're going to TGI Fridays. My cousin's 17 at the time. I'm 26 at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought the road stayed right. It actually stayed left. It's like a dark winter night. And up in New Hampshire is where I am. The snowbanks were so high that they were covering the signs. So there was a yield sign that I didn't see. And I looked up and I thought there was a Mack truck in front of me. I saw the brightest lights I'd ever seen. And I was looking down at the GPS, looked up, and I was like, and I had this moment, and I'll never forget, where it was like, this is it for me. And for those of you who have ever had a life or death situation, you kind of know what I'm talking about. But there was no part of me that thought I would survive it, because I thought it was a Mack truck. And it was right in front of me, and again, head-on collision.
Yeah.
Now, it ended up being a lift-kitted pickup truck. Up in New Hampshire, a lot of people have lift kits on their trucks.
Right.
Luckily, and I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat, both airbags deployed, and I used to call this car the Tank because it was such a German-engineered heavy car. It was like a really nice heavy car. I used to call it the Tank. I used to call it a steel trap. So fortunately, my cousin and I were physically okay. But circle back, my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28. So I'm 26 at the time, and I've seen the pictures of his car, and I heard the stories about John my entire life. And so for me at 26, I was just rattled. Physically, I was okay. I hurt my face on the airbag. My cousin hurt his knee on the airbag, but like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I was absolutely traumatized. I mean, just questioning my entire life. And I promised this would be short, but the important piece here is this. I say this quote: "You can't see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which you simply could not within the light." There was 2 stars that I started noticing after that. One was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. Regardless of what you think of Tony, his TED Talk is unbelievable. Best TED Talk of all time, in my opinion. Number 2, and more importantly, I came across a woman named Bronnie Ware from Australia. She wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. Now, what a coincidence, right? I almost died. my father did pass away. I'm in emotional and spiritual pain of looking back at all these regrets, right? And I find this book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. That book, to this day, I have a flashcard in my pocket. I'll be honest, it's right over there. It's not in my pocket, but it has all 5 regrets on it. She worked in hospice for 8 years with the terminally ill. If you want to learn insights to live by, the terminally ill is one of the places to go to start with the end in mind. She found out over 8 years of taking care of the terminally ill, these same common, I wish, and she put them in a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I've actually since interviewed her. It was so cool to meet her like 4 years later, all that. I was a huge fanboy. Yeah, it was great. I was a huge fanboy on that interview. But the very one top regret of the dying, the number one regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me. And so I didn't realize this as a kid, but I aimed high, but a lot of it was ideas that weren't originated in my consciousness. I think in hindsight, I was doing things for validation or to prove I was good enough or for external success. But I wasn't chasing the one thing that I now understand is the game, which is optimizing for fulfillment. And I'm actually writing a book right now called Optimizing for Fulfillment. And while I was very, very successful from a very young age, academically, financially, all that, I was not fulfilled. And I knew that after that car accident. And after that, I went all in on figuring out how to be as fulfilled as possible. And I went all in on holistic self-improvement. And here we are, years 7, almost 8 years later. Now I'm 33. I was 26 at the time. And we have a global podcast about self-improvement, but it didn't start there. It started out with a lot of regret. And how am I going to redesign myself? How am I going to redesign my life? How am I going to figure out who I am and who I aspire to be really, rather than chasing this external version of success based on heroes? How can I kind of learn how to become my own hero, so to speak? And that's the first insight I would say is life is about choices. Make sure you're making them consciously.
So at what point you had the accident? At what point from there did you really come to realize what it was that you truly needed to do? I mean, presumably, it made you stop and pause, but did you immediately realize what you needed to do? Or was it something that really took a bit of time and evolution for you ultimately to get to the point where it really, sort of came together for you that this is my journey, this is what I really need to do to be fulfilled? How did that all work for you?
So I think prior to 26, I was, obviously I grew up in the American culture, big dreams, big goals, success orientation, especially as an American male. It's definitely, it's not talked about often, but there's a huge pressure there of you're sort of supposed to be, super successful. And by the way, I've actually researched this. The number one form of shame in America for men is financial failure.
Right.
The number one form of shame for American women is body image. Right.
Wow.
And it totally makes sense when you think about it. And so to answer your original question, prior to 26, I was extremely goal oriented, future oriented. And not necessarily a bad thing. I actually think those are critical things. Being future-oriented and goal-oriented is very important. Yeah. But I wasn't nearly as intrinsic and holistic in my approach. And now I say character over everything, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual development of myself, and then allow success to be a byproduct of that rather than the other way around. But after that car accident, it took me a long time to shift that orientation of okay, I'm going to go out and chase success. That was my old orientation. Whereas now I'm going to become successful and then attract success based on who I am. Yeah. I used to think I have to go out and get it, be a go-getter. And now I understand it's not about go-getting or go-giving. It's actually becoming something that can attract. And it's really a flow. You have to get and give. You have to receive and give, and you're sort of the vessel, so to speak, of success, rather than you going out and getting success, if that makes sense.
So, okay, so based on that comment, I have to ask you, to what extent do you subscribe to the whole concept of the law of attraction then? Because you're talking around that area. So Are you coming from the point of view that you believe in the law of attraction, or, where is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I believe the law of attraction works when you're truthful with yourself and when others are truthful with you. And I think that that's the real game, for lack of better phrasing, that we're all playing, is like, when it comes to the law of attraction, I'll be kind of blunt about this. You're not going to sit on your couch and attract checks into your bank account. That's absolute crap. I think there's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So my take is that you imagine something in the spiritual world that doesn't exist yet. So the example I use in my speeches is, I'm imagining right now, closing my eyes, a purple elephant with a cowboy hat and a double barrel shotgun. Okay. So that's my unique purple elephant. That's only exists in my imagination. Now I'm going to emotionalize it. Okay, it's mine. I'm gonna do purple, and I'm gonna do green background and on top of a hill. Okay, awesome. Then I'm gonna strategize. This is the mental piece. This is the important piece. And I'm gonna get a crayon and a piece of paper, and I'm gonna draw this out now. Now I have to draw. I have to take physical action. Now something that only existed in my imagination became real. And have you ever heard of Barney? Right? That's how everything starts. And so if you understand that manifestation, I don't really like that word because I think it implies that you can just wish stuff into existence. Right. As long as you understand that everything that we built around us at one point was in someone's imagination, whether it's this iPhone or this mouse or this laptop or this StreamYard we're using right now or this bottle, but it was someone who imagined it first, then emotionalized it enough to take physical action, but also strategized about how to create it, and then rinse and repeat through that process. So to answer your original question, the law of attraction, I do agree with, to the extent that you're going to attract the person's, places, things, and ideas at the level of development you have. If you don't have financial acumen, you're not going to attract Warren Buffett into your life because he looks for people with financial acumen. But it gets a little murky when people are not truthful with their perception. So I'll give you an example. There's a lot of people on Instagram who are pretending to be something they aren't really. Yeah. And so it messes with the law of attraction. I've coached a lot of people, right? And I've coached but when you coach people, you get to see underneath the hood, so to speak. You get to see their real life. And the Instagram worthy photos are not truthful to what really is. As a matter of fact, a lot of times it's the opposite. I have one client who grosses $3 million a year in her own practice. She's unbelievably successful. She lives on a mansion in the mountains. But if you looked at her social media, you wouldn't even know she was successful because she's not that flashy. She doesn't show her cars or her mansion or any of that stuff. And then there's other people who are, in debt, struggling to pay their Porsche payment, who are still driving around in Ferraris and Porsches, even though, quite frankly, they have very little money. And so the truth is the law of attraction doesn't work when we're allowing ego and perception to drive us rather than truth. And I think the seeking of truth with self and others is really the game, so to speak.
Right. So for you, what is it exactly that motivates you? What is it that really drives you each day? What's the key thing?
So I have, I really appreciate the question. I have a purpose prayer that after that car accident that came to me. And it's something that I repeat to myself every single day. I used to write it every day. Now I have it memorized and I say it usually before the gym. And that's what really motivates me. I used to have a pleasure-centered paradigm of I think life is about fun and achievement. And now I have a mission-centered paradigm where really it's maximizing my own unique potential and my level of contribution. And I hope that will be clear to anyone who meets me now. But at the end of the day, what motivates me really is mission. And I'll tell a brief story that I think will articulate this. I had a friend, his name's Matt. And I remember one time he came up to me, and this was a couple of years ago. And he's like, "Hey, I've got an opportunity. I'm certain it's aligned for you." And I remember thinking, it's kind of arrogant. You're certain that it's aligned for me? And he ended up saying, well, it's this opportunity. It's this charitable initiative in Worcester. We're going to do, I think they called it Spree Day. It's a field day for kids. And I was like, you were right. You're absolutely right. That is aligned for me. You were 100% right. He knew that helping kids and educating kids is an absolute core aspiration and core value of mine. Right. My girlfriend and I do something called Books for Babes. Every holiday season, we donate kids books and we literally bring them to kids. Last year we had to bring it to teachers because COVID and all that.
Yeah.
But like they opened them, we wrap them in newspaper, which is environmentally friendly, and they get to open them, and we wrote like a handwritten thing in each of the boxes. And so he just knew that that was aligned for me because I'm mission driven. And no one's going to invite me to the bar anymore because I'm 854 days sober and I don't drink anymore. And they know, most of my friends, if you know me well, know, like, don't invite me. I'm not coming. I won't do it. My girlfriend asked me, she always asks me these great questions. She says, Alan, what are you going to do differently in your 33rd year? And I said, sweetheart, honestly, I'm not going to go outside of alignment anymore for anything. Like if it's not a 10 out of 10 for me, I just won't do it. Again, speaking and training, coaching and consulting, podcasting, like that's, and by the way, if we were podcasting about, if this was a comedy podcast, to be completely transparent, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I'm not funny. And, I'm here to help people maximize their potential and to maximize my own and to help them do the same. So that's my alignment. And hopefully that answers your question.
So for you, you touched on alcohol. So what was the motivator for you to decide to abstain from alcohol?
That's why I was talking about my intensity, because I am someone who knows that I dial things up, whether it's video games or snowboarding or getting straight A's or reading books or whatever. I dial everything up to 11, and I know that about myself. I do push the limits. And I think that's a gift if you channel it to the right things.
Right.
And if you channel it to the wrong things, that's not a good thing. One of my clients is that way too. We talk about it. She's multimillionaire, super successful, but she knows, like, if I start drinking, I'm going to drink more. And moderation isn't easy. It doesn't come naturally for us, no matter what I'm doing. And so that's why I told you the story about, I'm not going to change the world with my gentleness. I'm intense. Moderation is something I struggle with. So to be completely honest, I grew up around a lot of alcohol. When I was 14 years old, my sister was older. She was 3 years older, and she hung out with the older crowd. And we had the fun house. We grew up on a lake, and we had bonfires and all that stuff. And so I was 14, and me and my buddy Kiki would go to these parties that my sister would host. And my sister invited all her legal drinking age friends. And so I got exposed. I remember I had my first shot of wild turkey when I was 14. And I grew up in a culture, and again, law of attraction, that alcohol was definitely a thing. I partied in high school, I partied in college, and then I partied in corporate. As a matter of fact, Cognex, nothing against Cognex, I got to say that publicly, but like Cognex's motto to this day is work hard, play hard.
Right.
And I used to say work hard, play harder. And that was before 26. And at 26, after that car accident, I just realized that is not going to make me happy. That alcohol and fun and parties. I mean, I used to have corporate friends and college friends and high school friends, and I used to get invited to every barbecue and every party. And I had a lot of fun, right? I'm not gonna have regrets later in life of I really should have had more fun. I had more than enough fun for 12 lifetimes, to be honest with you. But that's why I feel now like I can really wholeheartedly give it up without feeling like I'm missing out. So I realized it was a vice and not a virtue for me. And I broke that cycle. And now it took me a long time. I mean, I remember I would fall off. There was a couple weddings that I said I wouldn't drink, and then I ended up drinking. It was really hard for me to quit, but here I am 7 years later, almost 3 years. Yeah. I'm coming up on 3 years and 1,000 days, soon in the next, 120 days or so. I don't think I'll ever drink again, to be honest with you.
Right.
But that's really the answer is I realized that it was not in alignment with my greatest potential and my greatest level of contribution. And I had to really sit with that hard truth and ask myself a question of, am I okay with settling for less than what I can be?
So you referred before to going for 11, not 10. So you're always really pushing the limits. Where did that come from? How long do you think you've been like that?
That's a great question, and I appreciate it. Because the reason I appreciate it is because I think that there's so many ways I could go with this. There's the whole nature-nurture argument. There's the whole, was it genetic or was it environmental? And the truth is we all know it's both. And obviously there's that new science about epigenetics and how you can change your genetics over time and all that. But the truth of the matter is that some of that is innate. Some of that is something I don't know how to explain. Like I'll tell you this. My team, we have a 13-person global team, and they're amazing. I mean, unbelievable. But they say to me, like, Alan, you're playing with different cards. And I know what they mean. What they mean is like, I'll say this. I think this will help you answer the question. When I was a little boy, we went to Point Sebago, which is a campsite up in Maine. And they gave away all these, they had all these competitions for kids. My sister and I went out and we basketball and tennis and football and like all these different competitions, free throw shooting, 3-point shooting. And then there was this cross country one where you had to run around on a beach. You had, in the hot sun, you ran, I think it was like an 800 meter or something, or a mile. And I like dominated. And my mom asked me later, she's like, I don't understand. Like, you don't run. Like, how did you beat all those other kids? And I was just a little kid, so I didn't really think about this response. But now in hindsight, my memory is really good. And I'm like, that's something. I said, Mom, I can suffer more than everybody else. Wow. I said, I can suffer more than all those other kids. And to be completely transparent, you asked me like 800 episodes. Like, I wonder to myself nowadays if most people can do that, because of course they can, right? Anyone can do 800 episodes, but you asked me like, how is that? Like, what's that like for you? It's absolutely brutal. I mean, think about it, right? 800 is just a number, but like we've never missed once, not once. I mean, I uploaded from the airport once. We would have missed the plane. I'm serious. Like that's the level we play at. And when I used to answer that question of, no, totally. Like, anybody can have that dial up to 11 thing. Honestly, it's an X factor that I was born with and or developed from a young age. It's always been there. And now that I've coached so many different types of people, it's definitely not something that everyone's playing with. And I do realize that. But I do think that everyone has Michael Jordan level talent at something. And maybe it's not tenacity. Like Bronnie Ware is not as self-disciplined as me. And it's nothing against Bronnie. Right. I love Bronnie. She's just much more gentle and she's much more go with the flow. And, she's a beautiful, magnificent feminine energy. And I'm a very strong masculine energy, and I've got feminine too. But to answer your question, it's a little bit of both. And it can be developed, but it's also something that's definitely innate as well.
So I've got two questions that come from that. They're possibly related, maybe not. One is, to what extent, if at all, you feel your father's passing at a young age has impacted on you? And the second question is, do you think, based on your feedback, that you're mentally tougher or mentally more resilient, and that's why you're able to do these things that others can't?
Yeah, great questions, and thank you for being willing to having the courage to ask me things like that. I grew up in adversity. Anyone who knows my story knows that, because even if it's just saying, I mean, without any of the details, father passed away when I was 2, almost 3, had a stepdad from 3 to 14. Stepdad left when I was 14. Like, not to mention the alcohol and small town I grew up in. And, adversity was always a big part of my life, quite frankly. As a matter of fact, as an adult, I look back and, I'll just tell this brief story too. Every Father's Day, Kevin and I get together. Kevin's my co-host. He didn't have a father either. So his father left when he was young. And we didn't know this at the time, but you want to talk about the law of attraction. We had a common wound, and the common wound was definitely self-worth. And that's clear to us now. And this not having a father and being raised by women. So I had an older sister and my mother, and Kevin had his mom and his grandma. Memes, mom and memes. And so we were both raised by women, and we never had a strong male role model, genuinely, at least not consistently. And it is very clear to me at this point in my life, looking back, that adversity definitely made me strong. But I also realized this. I've always had a lot of self-belief and anyone out there listening, it will be clear to you. Either you have a ton of self-belief and recognize it in me, or you don't, and I make you insecure and you think I'm arrogant. It is what it is. Okay, it is what it is. And that's just when you interview enough people and you get enough feedback from people, you realize that not everyone has, a lot of self-belief, and I just do. So, but that said, adversity is your advantage if you have a lot of self-belief. If you don't have a lot of self-belief and you're in adversity, you're in pain, you'll choose a vice. Why would you use it to develop yourself if you don't believe you can develop? And this is that whole growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I know some people I grew up with who also grew up in a lot of adversity, and their life does not look anything like what mine does now. And that's not to compare and say my life's so great, blah, blah, blah. But like, they don't have the grit that you're referring to. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's they didn't have the self-belief necessary to take adversity and to use it to their advantage. I mean, I have a friend who was told she'd never walk again when she was paralyzed, and she's doing handstands on the beach, and I can't wait for her to speak at our next event. But she had self-belief. I mean, if a doctor told you you'd never walk again, you might stop trying. And she's had a journey of 5 years of pain and suffering and trial and error and different clinics. And, she had to foam roll mid-interview just to get the pain out, and so self-belief, if you have it, adversity will create tenacity. It'll create strength. It'll create emotional muscle that other people just don't have. If you don't have self-belief, adversity will not be your advantage. Adversity will be something that you escape and use vices, and that trauma might actually keep you where you are rather than propel you forward.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point, and it leads into the next question I've got from that point. I believe there's a very distinct difference between arrogance and self-belief. What's your view on that, and how would you describe the differences if you, in fact, see that there is a difference?
There's definitely a difference, and I appreciate it. Again, great question. So self-belief is the belief in one's own ability to figure out and succeed on their own terms through trial and error and failing forward. Arrogance is an inflated perception of self that's not based on conscious effort or real merit. And honestly, some people who don't think they're arrogant, actually, I've found, are actually fairly arrogant. In other words, I call it a pufferfish and a turtle shell. I don't want anyone to think I'm being unkind. There's turtle shells and there's pufferfish. The pufferfish isn't actually strong. It's pretending to be strong when the shark comes because it doesn't want to get eaten. Okay? It's a defense mechanism. The turtle shell knows it's not strong or doesn't think it's strong, so it hides. Are you hiding or are you puffer fishing? And usually it's both. I think that true self-belief and self-confidence and virtue lives in the center. And I think that's why we think, like, even right now, I mean, am I centered? Or am I puffer fishing? Or am I like being modest because I don't want to appear arrogant, right? It's like, was Michael Jordan arrogant or was he right? See, was Steve Jobs arrogant or was he right?
Yeah.
And so it's this beautiful philosophical question that none of us really know until later on. Is Elon arrogant? Or did he start $3 billion companies simultaneously and no one's ever done that before and he's actually right? See, a lot of times you don't know till later. Everyone thought Michael Jordan was crazy. Everyone thought Steve Jobs was crazy. Most people still think Elon's crazy.
Yeah.
But what if he's crazy right? And so I've always been called crazy. You think too much. And, I've been called arrogant my entire life. Honestly, what if that's just from insecurity? What if it's people that don't know what real confidence looks like? Because I used to be the whole, like, I'm going to less myself to make other people less uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, there are times when I was arrogant, right? Yeah. I'm not perfect. And sometimes I do have an inflated perception of self. And you know what will keep you humble? Doing challenging things. Sure. I'm going to go to the gym tonight, and I'm telling you what, I've been working out for 7 years, fitness coach, fitness competitor, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, there's nothing more humbling than those weights.
Yeah.
When I'm lifting 80-pound dumbbells, I'm going to be like reminded of how not strong I really am, honestly. And I use that to my advantage. Now, if you're not naturally confident, don't do that. What you should be doing is building your confidence by proving to yourself what you are capable of. And that's also why the whole self-improvement industry is challenging, because some people are telling you one thing, but it doesn't apply to you. So, for example, if you struggle with self-confidence, you should not be trying to bench press 80-pound dumbbells, because that's going to crush your self-confidence. But if you are naturally confident, that challenge will actually keep you humble. So it's, you need the right medicine for the right patient, for the right reason, in the right amount, and the right dosage over the right amount of time. And that's why Aristotle has that big thing of like, well, do the right thing. It's like, well, who can do the right thing in the right way, at the right time, in the right amount, with the right people, for the right reason. And it's like, that's life. It's that soup of like, how do I understand myself and understand the world and understand my own decision-making paradigm so that I can have the right amount, the right diagnosis for the right job, for the right goal. It's kind of a whole thing. Honestly, it can be daunting.
Yeah. Interesting, from my point of view, the difference with arrogance to self-belief, I firmly believe those that are arrogant, all it is a mask for their insecurity.
Yeah.
If someone has strong self-belief, they don't need to go out there and tell anyone else. They don't have to shout it from the rooftops so they're good at something or what have you. They just believe in themselves and they'll just get the job done. Someone who's insecure needs to go out and tell everyone how great they are, because they actually don't know if they're going to be able to do it. So they're trying to convince other people, and in doing so, hopefully convince themselves.
Yeah.
That's my take. Yeah.
It's a powerful insight. And I think when I have been arrogant, it's always been a mask for deep insecurities, for sure.
Yeah. And I think we can all be that too. We can all be a mix of quietly self-confident and also arrogant from time to time. I reflect back to when I was a teenager, and I know I was often referred to as being arrogant. And I know now that it was just because I was insecure about things. But having said that, I too feel like you, that I have this innate belief in myself that I can do things. But it's not something I go around and shout from the rooftops. But when the going gets tough and I get myself in a corner, I will believe that I'll get myself out, and I'll fight hard to do it, but I will do it. But you made a great point. I personally believe adversity is where we learn the most. However, as you said, that also depends on the character of the individual. If you're a person with this absolute belief in oneself, and you suffer from adversity, then you will find a way through it and you will learn an incredible amount. However, if you are mentally weak and you're in a difficult situation, that could be it. That could just take you even further down a rabbit hole. So like you said, it really does come back to who you truly are and your ability to learn. But certainly if you have that ability, then adversity is when you're going to learn the most. It's not through things going well. You don't learn a lot when things go well. It's still too easy.
Yeah, I've got 800 failing forward episodes. So if anyone's even remotely admiring of any of the communication that I've done on this episode, it's like I've done it 800 other times, right? So it's and that's not including the other shows. So yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And the one piece I just want to add quickly before we move to the next question is vice versus virtue. When you're in a deep, dark, emotional place, and I've been there more times than I can count, you have a choice. You have a choice to escape it through vice or to develop a virtue. And I often say that the tools necessary to climb out of the deepest, darkest holes are actually what builds skyscrapers.
Right.
And if you can understand that simple phrase I just said and choose virtue over vice, and trust me, I've chosen vice myself. Alcohol for sure was my crutch to get through, traumas from my childhood and, stuff I can't even get into. But I eventually realized that was a crutch and that was a vice that was holding me back from my true potential. And so, it was masking my self-worth issues. And I've now admitted it, admit I have a drinking problem, admit I have self-worth issues, and now I can build from the truth. And now I feel like, honestly, my self-worth has gotten 10 times better, not from an ego, arrogant place, but from a true, authentic place. And obviously that's a climb I'm still on, but it's definitely upward.
Now, speaking of which, what does your future look like? What is it that you're wanting to achieve in the future?
The simplest form of it is to create an online educational platform for anyone to basically be able to access and attain the education, the tools they need knowledge-wise, so that they can believe in themselves and build a future on their own terms and develop the skills they need. So basically, I think ignorance and apathy are the two main sources of all human suffering. It's like I ask myself the question of like, where are we still putting leeches on ourselves to cure health issues? Where are we still believing the world is flat when it's actually round? Newtonian physics versus quantum physics, like all that kind of stuff. So ignorance and apathy is the problem. Knowledge and caring is the cure. And so to me, we either don't know any better or we don't care enough, right? The environment, for example. We either don't know any better because we're ignorant, or we know and we don't care enough.
Yeah.
And luckily, there's a lot of Netflix documentaries talking about what we're doing to this world. But I'm on the team of knowledge and caring. If you can combine knowledge with enough caring, I mean, that's what we're trying to do in the world. So Next Level University, it's about becoming the next level version of yourself. Let all of us sweep our own porch and the whole world will be clean. Let's figure out who we are and what we aspire to be, and let's improve holistically health, wealth, and love in an effort to become better so that this world is a better place for everybody. Because at the end of the day, again, fulfillment is a byproduct of the soul's recognition of alignment with its highest self. And there are times in my life where I had way more pleasure than I do now, but I'm way more fulfilled now because I'm proud of who I am. And when I was 26 and I got in that car accident, I wasn't proud of the man I had become.
Right.
And, if you get in a car accident, are you going to be proud of the person you've become? Are you going to be proud of the choices you've made? And not pride from an ego place, but pride from a sincere, authentic, like, I am such a good, virtuous human being who is in alignment with who they are meant to be. And, rabbits are rabbits and ducks are ducks, and nature, whether you want to call it God or spirit or whatever, like nature, you have a true nature. And you can align with that or not. And I used to be outside of alignment with it because I had all this junk in my life, persons, places, things, and ideas, drugs, alcohol, and I just got rid of all of it. I just slowly got rid of all of it. It took 7 years to get to the point where I feel, I'm not 10 out of 10 aligned, but I'm 9.9 and getting closer and closer and closer to 10, even though you'll never really get there. So hopefully that answers your original question.
So, I mean, a lot of people refer to, considering what you would want people to say when your end of life occurs, and to think about that. What are people going to get up and say about you, and then consider that where you are right now? And how is that going to make you feel if they get up and say whatever you think they're going to say? And I think that's a great way to really focus you and crystallize you and where you may be in your journey and whether or not you're on that right track. Because I'm sure pretty much everyone, when the time comes, want everyone to get up and say wonderful things about you and that you've contributed in so many different ways. But if we take that moment to really reflect on where we are and what we want people to describe, it's very easy to see how you might realize that they're not in alignment. You're going in one direction, but where you want to be at the end is actually somewhere quite different. And if you don't deal with it, then they're not going to get up and say those nice things about you. They're going to say some quite different things.
I love starting with the end in mind, and that's why I love Bronnie Ware's book, is the top 5 regrets of the dying. You want to learn insights to live by, figure out the people who were terminally ill and had regret. 2 best teachers on the planet, fulfillment and regret. There's your barometer. Fulfillment is the soul's recognition of alignment with its highest self, its highest calling. Regret is misalignment. It's the soul's recognition of misalignment with its highest calling. And I've had fulfillment and I've had regret. And I'm using those now as my barometer. And no one can tell you. I can't tell you or your listeners what's fulfilling. Like maybe gardening is fulfilling to you. It's not for me. Never has been. It is what it is. Right? This is fulfilling for me. People like, you work 7 days a week. I don't get it. It's like, I love what I do. Yeah. I absolutely love this. I would rather do this than anything else, right? I'd rather be in the gym, but there's a couple other things. But That's what it is. Fulfillment and regret. Those are your barometers. From 0 to 10, how fulfilled are you right now? And if the answer is a 7, okay. How do we get a little closer to 10? What's one thing we can change in our choices? What you say, think, do, feel, and believe. What you don't say, don't think, don't feel, don't believe. What's one shift we can make to get a little closer to 10? That's all I'm really doing with my clients. I'm helping them optimize for fulfillment. And then regret, best teacher of all time. When I was 26, I often say I had my midlife crisis at 26. Thank you. Thank you for my midlife crisis so early so I could make those necessary pivots and I don't have to buy a Ferrari when I'm 55, right? So that's my point, is regret and fulfillment. And to answer your original sort of thought about the starting with the end in mind, all I would want to be said about me, he believed in himself and others more than anyone else. I am not always perfect. I'm not always super kind. I'm going to push buttons. I tell the team sometimes I'm a pain in your butt, but I will always believe in your potential, always, more than anyone. And I've been that way since I was a little kid, honestly. Ever since I was 14 years old, talking about Lazaro, me and my buddy Keith Corton, we're going to start a company called Musket, the American Revolution. It was going to be a video game company, and we were going to, it's just always been aspiration. I've always been so damn aspirational. And if you don't have aspirations, you probably don't like me. It is what it is.
Yeah, and you cannot please everybody in this world. Everyone is different, and it would be boring if we all liked the same things and did the same things too anyway. So rather than see it as an issue, we need to embrace the fact that we are different and that not everyone's going to like you, and that's actually okay.
I adore that philosophy. That is a belief you and I share, for sure.
It's interesting. I've got another question I want to ask you, but I'm just going to share something with you just because there's a bit of commonality there, different, but nonetheless commonality in respects. And that is, my situation is my father got cancer when I was very young, and he survived that. But it impacted on his life because he had radiotherapy, and it was a few years ago now, and it was like basically they just nuked him. So looking back now, he really suffered from radiation poisoning. So he was never well. So he never was capable of playing sports with me, doing anything like that, because he just wasn't healthy enough to do it. And he was trying to maintain a job, which was as a teacher. And then he ended up getting motor neuron disease and died of that. So when he did that, it's really impacted on me insofar as becoming more aware and focused on quality of life. That growing up, I've always been highly motivated. At a young age, I was very much always going to be a businessman, financially motivated, all that sort of stuff. And because my father's illness now, I was independent, used to just having to do things for myself. But certainly when he passed, that certainly then, for me was a real realization of the importance of quality of life. And he, like, for instance, said that he wanted to, when he retired, buy a motorhome or camper van, we often call them here, and drive around New Zealand. And he never got there. He never was old enough. He never was of age to retire. So one of the things I did is I went out and bought a camper van, a motorhome, and did that traveling. And it might I don't know, people might think that's might not make sense, but to me, I was kind of doing it for him. There was this thing there for me. And anyway, it just, I think certainly in your life, there's a lot of events that happen that can either make or break you. For me, I feel that what's happened has really shaped who I am, much as what's happened for you has shaped you. So it's interesting. We've had not dissimilar events in our lives, and which have really, really had quite an impact on us. But anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. But what I do want to ask you is that with your university, the simple part is the educational part. And I'm not trying to trivialize it. But you said about people educating them and getting them to care. So how do you get them to care? How do you deal with that part of it? The education is relatively straightforward, but how do we get more people to care?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Reverse engineering regret. Um, we are motivated by pain more than pleasure, unfortunately. And if just like what happened to you with like you went out and did the camper early, like because you witnessed that your father never got a chance to, that was reverse engineering regret. You knew that you would regret it if you didn't. And unfortunately, that is how humans are wired. I studied dozens of neuroscience books and peak performance and productivity and TED Talks. And I mean, and then my own studies of like interviewing hundreds of people all over the world. Like human beings are more, if you tell your friends and family that you're doing a marathon in 3 months, you will run more consistently than I want to run every day for my good health. Like it just is what it is. And so I would say reverse engineer regret. That's how you get people to care. I had mortality motivation. A lot of people talk about it, but it's something. I'll tell you what. I was in deep, deep trauma and pain. After that car accident, I was claustrophobic. I could barely walk through doorways. Crowds bothered me. I kept getting pulled over because the double yellow lines scared me so much. I was on the wrong side of the road, or not the wrong side, but I was too far on the right side of the road. Yeah. And so, we talk a lot about, PTSD, and that's a very, very real thing for sure. But post-traumatic growth is also a real thing. If you can dig deep and figure out what moves you emotionally, you will do hard and necessary things when your back is up against the wall. But most of us don't have our backs up against the wall. And I personally operate from that place every single day. Like we said, we're never going to miss an episode. And here we are 800 episodes in with listeners, hundreds of thousands of listeners all over the world. If we missed an episode, there's no way we had more listens in one day last week than we did the entirety of the first year.
Wow.
That's momentum.
Great achievement.
Thank you. That's consistency.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to change. Everyone wants a successful podcast or a successful business or a successful body or a better physique or a successful relationship. But not everybody wants to track their habits every day and to make sure they are, students of their calendar and to make sure that they work out once a day and to make sure that they track their calories. Like I've had 570 calories today, right? Like,
wow.
None of it's guesswork. Success comes by design, not by default. I've been to my 10-year high school reunion. Success does not come by default. Success comes by design, and you have to design it. And that's what I would say. How do you get people to care? You show them what the opposite is. I am blessed at this point. I grew up in tremendous adversity, but if I didn't witness all those stories about my dad and him dying at 28, would I have maximized my potential so young? The answer is no. The answer is no. And so you got to seek that stuff out and you got to learn. And I'm reading a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius right now that my girlfriend got me for my birthday. And it's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable book. There's also another book by Lucius Seneca called On the Shortness of Life. And he talks about the 8 things to watch out for. One of them being self-imposed servitude from thankless people. I have a flashcard with all 8 written out. So study and contemplate and dig into what would happen if you got cancer and couldn't go out and do the things you wanted to do. Like that's going to motivate you way more than you got this, and that's the unfortunate truth about human beings. If we understood what we were leaving on the table, we would not leave it on the table. I'm certain of that. And at 26 found out what I was leaving on the table by drinking too much and too often and by not making choices aligned with my highest self and by not journaling and not reading books. Like I now understand what I was leaving on the table. In terms of fulfillment and love and compassion and virtue. And so that's my answer is how do you get people to care? You have conversations like this and you tell them the truth. You tell them the truth of like your future will be bright if you earn it. It will not be bright by default. No one's going to show up and save you. Like, you have to design this life on your own terms. No one's going to do that for you.
So, because one of my next questions was going to be, what are the key differences between those that succeed and don't? So I guess from what you're telling me so far, and you can elaborate on it though, is that you're saying that success is by design, is by going out there and actually doing it, planning it and achieving it. But take it over and tell me more in terms of what you think the differences are between those that succeed and those that don't.
At the simplest level, the people who succeed are the people who, I think all behavior is belief driven. The people who believe in their own ability to succeed always find a way. The people who don't believe enough in their own ability to succeed, they give up. We have 15 podcast clients. We've produced over 1,000 episodes for our clients. One of them, who's been with us the longest, his name's John. He has a Tomorrow's Leader is his show. You can look it up. And we've produced every one of his episodes. He's been with us for years. And he knows he's going to succeed because he believes in himself.
Yeah.
And so 220 episodes in versus someone who only makes it, I think it's 70% of podcasts only make it to the 24th episode or something like that. It's because they don't believe in their own ability to succeed enough, because they thought they'd come out of the gate and be Joe Rogan. And that's not how it works.
No.
It's not how it works, right? And even Joe Rogan wasn't Joe Rogan. He did Fear Factor, and he did UFC, and he was a comedian for decades. He was a fighter, and then eventually he started a podcast. And even that, you can go on YouTube and watch the first one. It's literally terrible. So it's momentum, it's consistency, and to answer your original question, belief and consistency.
Right.
With consistency over the long term, all things are possible. Without consistency, almost nothing is possible.
Right.
And I want everyone to really think about this. You want to write a book? If you can't write consistently, it's not possible. You want to write a book? And you can write every day, 3 paragraphs a day, every day. There's no question you can write a book. It all has to do with consistency. Consistency is the hardest thing in the world. Design your life around consistency, and then you'll get momentum. And when you get momentum, big things will happen beyond what you could fathom.
Now, a question I've been wanting to ask you, and I want to make sure I get this out, is for you, you're 33 years old, to what extent has it been an issue that you are quite young to be doing what you're doing? Because I think the stereotypical person kind of doing what you are doing would be kind of, 40s or 50s or something like that, with quite a few more miles on the clock, a lot more experience. So has that impacted on you at all? And if so, how have you countered that?
I really appreciate these questions. These are deep, and they take courage to ask. It's been a huge challenge. I look very, very young. I'm still hoping to hit puberty at 34 for sure. And I'm a business consultant for multi-millionaire business owners. Like, of course, that's a perception I have to get over. And it's a challenge I face every single day. And honestly, my transparent answer, God, this is so uncomfortable to talk about. If I looked older and more intelligent, I'm an athlete. I look young, and I was a model and blah, blah, blah. If I looked more intelligent and if I looked older, it would be far easier for me to succeed, especially in business consulting, because, most of my clients, to be completely transparent, are women, because their ego, it's very hard for a man to be as humble as you've been on this interview and to ask someone who looks as young as me life questions. Right. So at the end of the day, I've got a little probably chip on my shoulder still and something to prove. I've always looked very young, and I know that will be an advantage way later. But, honestly, that's always been a bottleneck that I'm still working hard to overcome. And, it's become an advantage now, or it's becoming one, because I've had to work that extra mile to really know my stuff. I used to sell like millions of dollars worth of industrial automation equipment to CEOs at GE. Right. So I looked younger then. I got carded for a Red Bull in Connecticut heading to a meeting where I was like, are you kidding me? Like, apparently you need to be 16 to get a Red Bull. in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Which is just like, I'm going to go sell hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of equipment to one of the top CEOs on the planet, and I'm getting carded for a Red Bull. So yes, that's been a tremendous bottleneck my entire life. I think it will continue to be for now, but I think that bow tie will flip, and I think it'll be an advantage way later in life, because I do plan on having a very, very, very long, successful career.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing you hold on to as well. That might be the case now, but hopefully at 75, you're still doing what you're doing, but everyone thinks you're 55. And you'll be like,
exactly.
Who cares? I'm happy.
Exactly.
So
And that is hopefully, yeah. I am playing the long game. Always have been. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think, and the other thing too is I do firmly believe that we have an opportunity to either wallow in self-pity over a disadvantage or a challenge that we have, or turn it into a strength for us. And I think, taking your example, I think it's an opportunity to go, okay, I am younger. That might count against me in some regards, but that I'm just going to double down on what I do, because in order to be accepted, I'm probably going to have to prove myself that much more than everyone else. So rather than that being a problem, actually, that's really good, because I'm going to be even better than everybody else, because I'm having to counter the fact that I'm younger than they are. It's all perspective, though, isn't it? You either wallow it and see it as a problem, or you go, no, actually, I'm going to turn this into an advantage.
Exactly. 1,000%. And one of the reasons why I consider myself someone who, computer science background, neuroscience background, technology, my team and I are working on eventually having a project management tool that I think will change the industry. Like, that's because I've had to study every little thing, just because I've had to overcome those adversities of appearing like I do. I look more like an athlete than a nerd. It is what it is, but I've got an electrical and computer engineering degree from one of the top institutions on the planet. Right. And so, yeah, it is what it is. And I've had many disadvantages, and that's okay, because I've just tried to double down and triple down on my strengths. So I really appreciate the question. That was a good one.
All right. Well, just to wrap it up, what I'd like from you is just some key advice to people that might be listening, about just some generic things that you think are important that people should consider in their journey to success. What sort of things should people be aware of?
The first one is think long term. Very little can be achieved in a very short amount of time. But the compound effect of I did this out once when we passed 600 episodes. There was this beautiful meme that Kevin created. It showed us in my sister's old room podcasting 100 episodes in, and then it showed my next studio. Our next studio was like my mother's basement, right? 300 episodes in, and then 600 episodes in, we had our own studio, beautiful professional camera, amazing backdrop, TV in the background, just unbelievable lighting, and we're all dressed up, right? And it's such a transformation photo. And it's like, if you had seen us 100 episodes in, you'd have counted us out. And I calculated it out. I put $1,000 into a financial calculator, and I calculated what it would be if we grew it by 1% every day for 600 days. And it grew to $387,000. And so I said, Kevin, assuming we got 1% better each episode, in some small way, we are now 387 times better. And at 1,200, we'll be 387 times better than that. And so if you're a numbers person, you understand exponentials and how they work. That is how you can change the world. That is how you can change your world, at very least. And so that's what I would give. Think long term, focus on consistency, focus on your character over everything. Who you are and what you do when no one's watching is the real tell. I genuinely care more about my conscious effort tonight in the gym with my girlfriend than I do about this episode. And I mean that with love. I don't not care about this episode. That standard that I set for myself, no one else is going to govern that. I'm going to put in conscious effort every single day to the very best of my ability, and I'm going to leave it all on the court. And I screw up too. I watch Netflix and eat ice cream too, but it's less than I used to, and I'm getting better every single day. And that's my main focus, is 1% improvement every day. Never lose momentum. The NLU team would tell you, if they had a nickel for every time I submitted one of those little train emojis, we wouldn't have any financial challenges because
Nice.
I send the little train emoji every single day to every single team member, constantly through all communications, because momentum is everything. Just don't lose momentum. Keep your momentum and keep your consistency. Certainty creates consistency. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum changes lives. Momentum creates massive results. So stop the wrong trains. For me, I stopped alcohol. Start the right trains. I started fitness, and keep the momentum. And you'll be blown away over what can happen in the long term. And you won't regret it. No one's ever regretted, I really wish I had worked out less. Oh, I really wish I had read less books. I really wish I had been more unkind, right? Virtues are universal. We're all different, but virtues are universal. Compassion is always going to be a virtue. Hard work is always going to be a virtue. Grit when times get tough is always going to be a virtue. Aspiration is always going to be a virtue. Honestly, alcohol is always going to be a vice, whether we like it or not. It's literally poison, okay? And I'm not hating on anyone who drinks. I'm just saying virtues and vices are universal languages, no matter what culture, no matter what country, no matter what background. Compassion's a virtue in every culture. I don't care what color you are or what race you are or if you're bisexual or not. I don't care about your religious backgrounds. Virtue is virtue and vice is vice. And if you get a little closer to the virtue side every single day, then you will be successful and you will be fulfilled.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Alan. You've made a lot of, given us a lot of sound advice, a lot of stuff that really makes sense. It's not that complicated, but it's the commitment to the journey that's a challenge for most people. So I think listening to you is inspirational. So I'm hoping that people listening will be inspired as I am. And if they need to, we'll include the links in that so that they can always reach out to you if they want to engage with you and the services that you guys provide. But very impressed and inspired by your talk. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really appreciate it. And Insights into Success is an awesome title. When I saw this on my calendar through my assistant, I got so excited because Insights into Success, I'm still learning them constantly. And just thank you for having a platform that you take so seriously. It's very clear to me that these are thorough, thoughtful questions. You really care about my responses. And if you ever need anything, don't be afraid to reach out. And that goes to all your listeners as well. Between my assistant and I, we get back to everyone. If you think that there's something that I can do to help you, if it's not aligned, I will say it. But if you need help and need more guidance and want more direction, there's certainly something that me or my team can provide. And so thank you. I really appreciate it. This was one of the best interviews I've ever been on, honestly.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure for me too. And yes, I have to say I very much sincerely would love to stay in touch because I think you've got a lot to offer. And I very much feel like what you have to say resonates with my point of view. So it's been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much.